In May 2025, a team of Polish scientists stood before an audience in Poznan and made a claim that sent shockwaves through the academic world. They said they'd found something in the DNA of Poland's founding dynasty that shouldn't exist. The Piast kings, the men who created Poland and ruled it for nearly 400 years, apparently carried genetic markers that connected them to painted warriors from ancient Scotland. Within weeks, headlines were screaming about Polish kings with Scottish origins. Critics were calling it junk science, and historians were scrambling to make sense of a discovery that, if true, would rewrite 1,000 years of European history. But here's the thing: nobody can agree if it's real. This is the story of the most controversial DNA claim in medieval history, and after months of investigation, I'm going to show you exactly why this mystery matters. Let's start with what the Polish team claims they found. Professor Marek Figlerowicz's team from the Institute of Bioorganic Chemistry in Poznan has been extracting DNA from royal Polish bones since 2014. We're talking about remains from cathedral crypts, Płock, Opole, Lubin, Warsaw. Kings, princes, dukes, 33 members of the Piast dynasty, most of them male, dating from 1100 to 1495. According to their conference presentations, and this is important, it's conference presentations, not published papers yet, almost every male carried the same Y chromosome marker, R1b-S747, also known as R1b-L1335. Now, if you're Polish, this should be impossible. This marker appears in less than 1% of Polish men today. Actually, in genetic surveys of over 5,700 Polish males, they haven't found it at all, not once. But in Scotland, different story. 10% of Scottish men carry it. In the Western Highlands, even more. They call it the Scots modal haplogroup. It's 10 times more common in men with Scottish grandfathers than English ones. So the Polish team starts searching databases, looking for ancient DNA matches. And they find one. A Pictish warrior from eastern Scotland, buried 1,500 years ago. Think about what they're claiming here. The dynasty that founded Poland, that fought the Mongols and the Teutonic Knights, that built the cathedrals and castles that still define Poland today. They're saying these kings carried DNA that links them to the ancient Picts, the painted warriors who held off Rome, the mysterious people who carved symbol stones we still can't fully decipher. It's either the discovery of the century or a massive misunderstanding, and that's where our investigation begins. Before we can evaluate this claim, we need to understand who the Picts really were. Forget the Hollywood version, blue-painted savages screaming at Romans. The real Picts were far more interesting. They controlled most of Scotland from roughly 300 to 900 AD. They built massive stone towers called brochs, created intricate metalwork that's been found across Northern Europe, carved elaborate symbol stones with a writing system we still can't crack. The Romans called them Picti, the painted ones, probably because of tattoos or war paint, but the Picts called themselves something else, something we've lost because their language vanished almost completely. In 2023, and this part is absolutely confirmed and published, Dr. Adeline Mores and her team sequenced ancient Pictish DNA from 2 cemeteries, Lundin Links in Fife, 7 individuals, and Ballintor in Easter Ross, 1 individual. 8 individuals total from the 5th to 7th centuries. Published April 27, 2023 in PLOS Genetics. Peer-reviewed, verified, solid science. Here's what they found. The Picts weren't exotic migrants. They were the indigenous people of Scotland, directly descended from the Iron Age British population. Local boys, genetically speaking. But, and this is crucial, that study says absolutely nothing about Poland, nothing about the Piasts, nothing about any connection to Eastern Europe, not a single mention. The Polish team is taking that publicly available Pictish genetic data and comparing it to their unpublished Piast data, finding what they claim is a match, and drawing conclusions. The Pictish DNA is real. The Piast DNA extraction is real. But the connection between them, that's where things get complicated. The Piast dynasty appears suddenly in Polish history around 960 AD with Mieszko I. No clear ancestry, no genealogy going back more than a generation or two. The medieval chronicles call them descendants of Piast the wheelwright, a semi-legendary figure who supposedly founded the dynasty. But even medieval chroniclers, who loved inventing elaborate genealogies connecting rulers to Troy or Rome, couldn't explain where the Piasts really came from. They just appeared. And then they ruled Poland for 370 years. The genetic project started in December 2014, funded by the Polish National Science Center with over 6 million zloty. That's Polish currency, worth around 1.65 million US. 7 years of work until December 2021. 24 researchers. Cutting-edge ancient DNA extraction techniques. They've published papers on East Central European genetics. They've proven they can do the science. 16 peer-reviewed papers have come from this project. But the specific Piast dynasty results, those were presented at conferences in Poznan in May and June 2025. The raw data is reportedly in public databases, but there's no peer-reviewed paper yet specifically on the Piast-Pict connection. No independent verification. No response to critics who say the whole thing is based on misidentified DNA. And the critics are loud. Dr. Dariusz Błaszczyk from the University of Warsaw, he's real, I checked his publications, says the haplogroup identification is wrong. He claims what they're calling R1b-S747 is actually R1b-U152, a completely different marker that's found in Alpine and Celtic populations, including small percentages of Poles. The difference between these two markers is tiny in genetic terms, but huge in geographic implications. One points to Scotland, the other points to Central Europe, and the identification apparently rests on a single sample from one medieval duke, Wacław I of Płock, who died in 1336. You know, researching stories like this is exactly why I wrote The Painted People, to separate fact from fiction when it comes to the Picts and their incredible history. The book dives deep into what we actually know from archaeology, and now DNA about these mysterious warriors. It explores their art, their battles with Rome, their symbol stones, and yes, their genetic legacy that we're only now uncovering. Whether or not they're connected to Polish royalty, their confirmed story is fascinating enough. The book is 65% off for viewers of this channel, and there's an exclusive Pictish recipe collection available as an add-on, based on isotope analysis of what they actually ate. Every purchase helps fund deep dive investigations like this one. Link in the description if you want to explore beyond the headlines. Let me play devil's advocate. Here's why the Piast-Pict connection, as wild as it sounds, might actually be real. First, medieval Europe wasn't isolated nations with closed borders. It was networks, trade networks, marriage networks, warrior networks. The Amber Road connected the Baltic to the Mediterranean, running right through Poland and Celtic territories. Amber from Poland has been found in Scottish Bronze Age burials. Celtic artifacts appear in Polish archaeological sites. The networks existed. Second, both Polish and Scottish medieval chronicles make bizarre claims about Scythian ancestry. The Scottish Declaration of Arbroath from 1320 says the Scots came from Greater Scythia. Polish chronicles make similar claims. Pure medieval fantasy, we always thought. But here's something interesting. Back in 1882, a farmer in Witaszkowo, Poland, found a 6th century BC Scythian gold hoard. Nearly 5 kilograms of gold artifacts. Real Scythian treasures in Polish soil. In 2015, archaeologists finally pinpointed the exact location of that discovery. Maybe those medieval chroniclers were preserving some garbled memory of actual ancient connections. Third, the R1b haplogroup itself tells a story of ancient migrations. It came to Western Europe with the Bell Beaker culture around 2400 BC, spreading from Central Europe. These migrations replaced 90% of Britain's Neolithic population. The same genetic substrate underlies both Poland and Scotland, just in different proportions. What looks like a Scottish marker might actually be an ancient marker that survived in Scotland but disappeared from Poland, except in one royal family. Fourth, We know medieval elites were incredibly mobile. Vikings created trade routes from Scotland to Poland through Russian rivers. The Varangian Guard included Scots and Poles. Medieval merchants travelled from Edinburgh to Krakow. One ambitious warrior with unusual DNA, arriving at the right moment in Polish history, could found a dynasty. It's happened before. The Normans did it in England. The Ruriks did it in Russia. But here's why the skeptics might be right. The entire theory rests on unpublished data from conference presentations. No peer review, no independent verification. That's not how science is supposed to work. The haplogroup identification comes from degraded medieval DNA, where a single sequencing error could change everything. And it's allegedly based primarily on one individual from the 14th century, hardly representative of the entire dynasty. The modern population genetics raises serious questions about the Scottish theory. If the Piasts really carried R1BB-S747, and if they ruled for 370 years, having many children who married into Polish nobility, where is that DNA today? It should be detectable. A major Polish genetic study tested 2,705 males. But here's the catch. They only looked at broad haplogroups, not specific subclades like R1B-L1335. So while we know R1B is rare in Poland at just 14%, we can't actually verify from published data whether R1BL1335 specifically exists there or not. The absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, but it's still suspicious that this supposedly royal marker hasn't been clearly identified in modern Polish populations. The Pictish study that supposedly provides the matching DNA doesn't mention Poland at all. The researchers were comparing Picts to other British and Irish populations. The Polish team is taking that public data and making comparisons the original researchers never intended. That's not necessarily wrong, but it's not the same as a coordinated study, finding a connection. And then there's the timing. The Pictish samples are from the 5th to 6th centuries. The Piasts appear in the 10th century. That's a 400 to 500 year gap with no intermediate evidence. How does Scottish DNA from the 500s end up in Polish royalty in the 900s? Through what mechanism? Via what route? The theory requires migrations or connections we have zero historical evidence for. The Polish academic community is at war over this. The National Geographic Poland published a scathing critique calling the conclusions absurd and erroneous. The University of Warsaw's paleogenetics laboratory identified multiple inconsistencies in the data, but the Poznan team stands by their findings. They say they've triple-checked everything. They've deposited their raw data in public databases. They invite verification. Professor Figlerowicz's team includes respected scientists who've published legitimate papers on ancient DNA. They're not cranks or attention seekers, but their critics include equally respected archaeologists and geneticists who say the methodology is flawed. It's scientist versus scientist, data versus data, interpretation versus interpretation. The controversy has split along interesting lines. Geneticists tend to be more open to the possibility, arguing that DNA doesn't lie, even if it tells uncomfortable truths. Historians and archaeologists tend to be more skeptical, arguing that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and conference presentations don't cut it. The public, meanwhile, loves the story. Polish kings from Scotland. It's irresistible, whether true or false. What fascinates me about this whole controversy is what it reveals about how we construct history. For centuries, we believed the Piasts were pure Slavic rulers, indigenous Polish heroes. That belief shaped Polish national identity. Then DNA technology comes along and potentially shatters that narrative. But the DNA itself is disputed. The methods are questioned. The results are unpublished. So what do we actually know? We know the Piasts existed. We know they ruled Poland. We know their bones contain DNA that can be extracted and analyzed. We know the Picts existed. We know their DNA has been sequenced. We know both groups left mysteries. The Picts with their undeciphered symbols, the Piasts with their unclear origins. But do we know they're connected? Not yet, maybe not ever. This is science in real time. Messy, disputed, uncertain. Most scientific controversies happen in specialized journals where only experts pay attention. But this one broke containment. It's in newspapers, on social media, in YouTube videos. People are choosing sides based on nationalism, romanticism, or skepticism rather than data, because the data itself is contested. Investigating mysteries like this has completely changed how I think about ancient history. That's why The Painted People doesn't just repeat old stories about the Picts. It digs into the latest archaeological and genetic evidence to show who these people really were. The book examines their genuine connections across Europe, their wars with Rome, their art and symbols, and what their DNA tells us about British history. Plus, there's that exclusive recipe collection based on isotope analysis of Pictish remains. Real food from 1,500 years ago you can make today. It's 65% off for channel viewers. Every purchase supports investigations like this one, where we separate fascinating facts from tempting fiction. Link below if you're ready to go deeper. The Poznan team says a peer-reviewed paper is coming. When it arrives, if it arrives, real scientific debate can begin. Independent labs can verify or refute the findings. The haplogroup identification can be confirmed or corrected. The statistical significance can be calculated. Science can do what science does, slowly, methodically approach truth. But maybe the paper never comes. Maybe the critics are right, and the data doesn't support the claims. Maybe this becomes a cautionary tale about the dangers of science by press conference. Or maybe, just maybe, the paper comes out and confirms everything. Polish kings with Scottish DNA. A hidden connection across medieval Europe. History rewritten by genetics. Until then, we're in limbo. The Piast-Pict connection exists in a quantum state, simultaneously true and false, revolutionary and ridiculous. It's Schrödinger's dynasty. And that uncertainty, that mystery, that's what makes it irresistible. Because whether the connection is real or not, the search for it reveals something true. Our hunger to understand where we came from, even if the answer surprises us. Here's what I think is the real story. It's not whether Polish kings had Scottish DNA. It's that we're living through a revolution in how we understand the past. DNA technology is revealing migrations, connections, and populations we never knew existed. Sometimes it confirms traditional history, sometimes it obliterates it, but it always complicates it. The Piast-Pict controversy is just one battle in a larger war over who gets to tell history. Do genes trump chronicles? Does DNA override archaeology? Can a nucleotide sequence rewrite national identity? These aren't just scientific questions. They're political, cultural, and deeply personal. Because if Polish kings can have Scottish DNA, if medieval dynasties can have foreign origins, then every national origin story becomes suspect. Maybe that's healthy. Maybe we need our certainties shaken. Maybe discovering that medieval Europe was more connected, more mobile, more genetically complex than we imagined is exactly the lesson we need. Borders are newer than we think. Peoples are more mixed than we admit. Identity is more complicated than we pretend. So where does this leave us? With a mystery that might never be solved, with claims that might be revolutionary or might be misidentified DNA, with a controversy that reveals as much about us as about the past. The Piast-Pict connection remains unproven, but the fact that it could be true, that DNA technology makes such connections discoverable, that changes everything. I'll keep tracking this story. When the peer-reviewed paper comes out, if it comes out, I'll update you. When independent labs verify or refute the findings, you'll know. Because this isn't just about Polish kings or Scottish warriors. It's about how we understand human history in the age of ancient DNA. It's about what happens when science meets legend and finds something unexpected. The bones in Polish crypts hold secrets. The stones in Scottish fields mark graves of painted warriors. Somewhere in the genetic code that connects them, or doesn't, lies a truth about medieval Europe we're only beginning to uncover. Whether the Piasts and Picts are linked by blood or separated by faulty science. Their stories remind us that the past is never as simple as we think. History isn't just written by the victors. Sometimes it's written in DNA, waiting centuries for us to develop the technology to read it. And sometimes, like now, we develop the technology but can't agree on what we're reading. That's not a failure of science. That's science working exactly as it should. Slowly, carefully, contentiously. Moving toward truth one disputed study at a time. If you enjoyed this investigation into one of history's most controversial DNA claims, please like and subscribe. I'll keep following this story as it develops. And if you want to dive deeper into the confirmed history of the Picts, The Painted People is available at 65% off through the link below. Thanks for joining me in exploring where legend meets laboratory, where DNA meets dynasty, and where the past refuses to stay buried. Drop a comment with your take. Compelling theory or flawed science? The debate is far from over.